Society has long been accustomed to make waste methods to production. But these practices are no longer sustainable. To face the challenges of a growing world population, climate change, and resource scarcity, the world must change the way we consume, away from the linear towards a more circular approach. The ways in which businesses function and execute their operations have changed as the global economy has undergone major transformations in the past few years. Organizations today are shifting towards adopting circular economy and engaging in sustainable practices that are environment friendly. Namrata, I would like to start with you. Like I just mentioned, this transition is extremely critical for each one of us for sustainable development. How are ESG goals now driving business strategy towards this for companies?
The world around us is changing. The way we make things, the way we grow things, everything is going to transform because of the energy transition. That fundamentally means that how we make and use products and services also therefore needs to change. And ESG goals don't necessarily just mean that you set up a target for the company. They actually need to be implemented. So once you start creating a sustainability report, year after year after year, you need to show the movement towards the achievement of those net zero targets or any other targets that you may have set for your organization. Now, that essentially means that organizations need business model change. They need to understand deeply how products are designed and therefore also look into it in the context of how will they eventually be used. Will they lie around in landfills? Or can we create products and services that are actually kinder to the world around us?
You know, you've explained that so well, but if I can ask you, Prashant, what frameworks or approaches does Deloitte recommend when it comes to ESG efforts, actually also translating into a business value, looking at the financial aspect, because that's also important for any business?
Thank you. I think it's an important question, right? When we looked at businesses, the fundamental thing business operates was on financial returns, right? So that has been over centuries, that was the way it has worked. What now is important in the context of ESG is what we recommend is a multi-stakeholder approach, not only, investors, which is the shareholders, but also customers, also employees, and also communities and environment at large, right? So what we recommend today is what we developed and called as sustainable value map, which takes into account the financial returns, obviously, because that's important, but also what I said as multiple other stakeholders. Employees wants to be in a company which is ESG today, right? They want to be part of, because not only it's today, but tomorrow. I need to have skills, which is important because 15 years down the line, I want skills. I should be employable tomorrow. Customers want products and services which are again, environmentally sustainable tomorrow, right? We also need to take care of communities around, right? Whether, companies taking out large amount of resources, water, right? So if a company has done a lot more on the water side, right? You have reduced the consumption, so therefore you are less using the actual virgin water, right? Yeah. So and emissions, which is the one which we talk about, because lesser emissions is better air around the community. So it's important that companies look at in a holistic way. And I think in earlier panels we have talked, it was discussed as well. Companies doing any of these, ultimately it hits the bottom line, right? If you are consuming less energy, less resources, it's actually hitting your bottom line. The profits are increasing, and therefore it is important that companies do this in a right way.
So I think when companies realize that at the end of the day, it's benefiting them, and of course, being sustainable, like you rightly said, being a part of ESG, they're doing the right thing, also being mindful about the future generations, actually it impacts them as well. Mr. Bansal, if I could ask you, with the shift towards a circular economy, we have been discussing that, Namrata just mentioned it, Prashant just mentioned it. What steps should businesses be taking or prioritizing for the successfully transformation from a linear to a circular model?
Yeah, I think this is very important, not only from the perspective of the ESG requirements. I think circular economy is very important also nowadays, especially for the industries who are more energy intensive, who are more material intensive, especially if you look at the packaging industry, FMCG, pharmaceuticals, and of course the these industries are very, very, I think, energy intensive, resource intensive. It's very important that they move to the circular economy pathways. As you rightly pointed out in the beginning, the linear models, I think, are not really the ways of working now, especially for these industries. If you see that all these industries are also like facing a lot of resource constraint. Yeah. And actually in the linear models, actually what are you doing? Like, of course, like only 20% or 10% you are trying to recycle. Like even now we see the plastic recycling is only 9%, which we are achieving. But much more than that is getting actually kind of getting leaked into the environment, and ultimately some of the waste, which is some of the plastics, we are able to send it to the cement industries and convert, like make waste to energy out of that. But ultimately we're not really closing the loop. I think it's very important from not only from the ESG framework perspective, also from the financial, I think, sustainability. It's very important that they find ways, all the industry, everybody find ways to, I think, move more into the circular economic pathway.
I think a very critical point what you mentioned is closing the loop. Of course, finances is important, but closing the loop is equally important. Just moving ahead, Mr. Singh, talking about technology, we really know that's the future. If you can tell us what role does the Technology Development Board play in promoting, when we're talking about ethical governance practice, but also with the tech-driven initiatives?
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. So I'd like to introduce Technology Development Board first. We had been into the market, the finance market, for about 3 decades now. We can be called as a VC arm of Department of Science and Technology. We had been funding projects who have technology at TRL level 7 and above. We had been helping them commercialize, into the market. So as far as your question is concerned regarding ESG practices, we had been promoting companies into companies which are, environment friendly. For say, if they have if they already have ESG practices in place and ESG reports in place, there are more chances that they get funded. So whatever they are asking, the government the board is able to fund them. So and moreover, we had been funding companies like biomethane and then bioplastics and things like that. Yeah.
So a lot is happening on that front. We're going to be coming back to talk a little bit more on technology. Namrata, if I can ask you here about the challenges aspect. Now, when we say ESG, of course, just for our viewers also, we would like to mention it's environmental, social, and governance criteria. What are the challenges that businesses face? And, how can they overcome these obstacles? Because they have to. Like when we're looking at that, give us a little bit, about that.
So let's just look at the world around us. How many things need to be re-looked at now in the context of ESG is a question to be asked, which essentially means that a lot of the problems that we see around us is either poorly designed products or the wrong materials. So there is no particular material that has an identity of its own. It's just how we use it. It's where we use it. And what do we do to actually scale that practice? That fundamentally means a huge opportunity is there for businesses to redesign products and services, to look at new materials, to look at new processes, and also keeping in mind what you just said, that there are new opportunities for businesses to be built. There are centers of innovation within organizations that are now growing exponentially. Not just because, innovation is a good thing to do, but it's actually driving business value. Because large organizations are established in a particular way. They have a particular business model. They've been doing that for a very long time. Change is not easy. But if you start looking deeply at what does ESG really mean to an organization, it means business model change, transformative changes, and long-term impacts through innovation.
Okay, great. And if this is about what Namrata has explained, just taking it a step forward. Prashant, if you can give us some examples or best practices, if I could ask you, what some companies are really embedding when they're looking at sustainability into their business models, if you can share that for all of us.
Sure. I think we work with across set of clients in multiple industries. 2 or 3 things which comes important, right? So one, companies as mandates, building their sustainability reports and so on. But more importantly, companies have taken targets, right? Whether it's 2040, 2050 net zero commitments. what does it mean is, one, it allows them to do, especially in the energy space, to look at what are the alternate new businesses they can enter, right? Because we know what is going to happen in their traditional businesses. It also provides them the new business opportunities, new areas to invest in, right? Two, it also looks at the business risk, right? So some of the energy companies looking at what is happening today, 15 years down the line, this is a business risk because this business may not exist for me, right? They're planning for the future because it allows you to plan for the future. Otherwise, you may stand at 10 years down the line and this doesn't exist. And we have seen, especially in the technology companies, number
Looking
of
forward is
initiatives,
key,
right?
yeah.
So forward. Three, the changes which are happening, right? Whether it's in terms of doing flash floods, extreme weather events, also needs to plan, where my factories are. Am I protected in that sense, right? Where my investments are in, right? So it also, people and companies are looking at, am I protected in that, right? Because, disruption for a month is a huge impact, right? So number of companies are looking at future using technology, using predictive modeling, right? And now we have tools, what will happen if this weather event happens, right? So this is number of companies are doing. Also on the other side, whether it's financial institutions, right? They need to give funding for, say, sustainable investments. Are the processes ready today, right? We're talking about recycling and stuff. There are a number of recyclers, maybe a small companies. Are we ready to fund them? Are we ready to do the processes? Because unless you plan for it, unless you change the processes, it would not happen. So number of things, areas where companies are looking, and this helps them to build that out.
And then these other companies can pick up, like you rightly said.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they become lessons to be learned, or just thinking forward, taking it forward. Mr. Bansal, just coming to a point, I think, which is extremely critical is mindsets. How easy or how difficult is it to change that mindset at a company level? And then, of course, it's further even tougher because when it goes to the partners.
Yeah, I think it's very important also, and I think here the transparency part will come really the foremost. Especially like if you have to communicate what are the changes which you actually will be bringing if you actually comply with the ESG and circular economy principles. And at that transparency will be at the individual level, of course at the community level also. Then only I think the entire, all the stakeholders internally as well as externally will be able to see that this is the impact which you are creating. Then of course you need the commitment at the top level and not only the commitment in terms of just ensuring the compliances. Again, you'll have to see that how are you bringing in these all sustainable initiatives in the company and what is the impact you're creating. I think in earlier session which we are hearing also that it's not really that ticking all the boxes. It's very complicated procedure. But I think if the company is sustainable, it is very much visible. Your actions will be very much visible to the entire industry. Entire outside world also that you are actually complying to all the requirements. And that's why I think transparency part externally, internally is very important.
Okay, great. So, Mr. Singh, we've been talking about the E and S part, which is environmental and sustainability. One on governance, which I would like to ask you is, how can businesses or organizations strengthen governance framework to ensure accountability as well as transparency in their ESG initiative?
Right, thank you for that question, ma'am. So I'll give you two examples. One is the quality circle. In every industry, there are a lot of quality circle. Okay, so it is a group of employees that work on a specific problem, targeted problem within their own company. So if we have, if we talk about technology, so organizing quality circles and tracking the data in real time using digital methods is one. Second thing that I would like to point out here is that in the ESG practices, especially the governance aspect, the role of deep tech is still undermined, and we need and things like predictive maintenance and predictive analysis of things that can happen in future, especially in the governance domain, is yet to be explored. And India is one of the biggest markets in which these things are evolving, given the empowerment of the Digital India mission. In fact, I'd like to also point out one point here is that things like the Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji has been instrumental in bringing this. Recently, there has been a separate monitoring committee called CCUMS, which is into carbon credit monitoring. And he has been actively attending most meetings in person and monitoring the whole protocol of it. So carbon credit and things like that have been instrumental in the governance aspect, and these are the things that have to be looked forward to.
Okay, and I think the need, like you rightly said, is being worked upon. Namrata, quickly, I would like to ask you, when we look at the ESG report of KPMG recently, what are the key insights that are emerging? Which sector, if I can ask you specifically, or regions where you see there's maximum progress or challenges?
So, ESG, in a sense, has been adopted by organizations in India at scale. But the biggest challenges that they really are talking about is how do we make it repeatable, how do we make it consistent, and how do we actually embed it within the organization. For that, one of the biggest learnings that we have from talking to all our clients and many others is the fact that the absence of green skills. People at the ground level need to know and they need to understand what does sustainability really mean to them in their daily lives in terms of every single thing that they do on an ongoing basis. So therefore, the importance of green skills is even more critical in the context of our government's mission for Viksit Bharat, where we are talking about skilling millions of people that are entering the workforce. And if we were to actually look at green skills and embedding green skills into them, then we have a wonderful growth story as well as a story of inclusion.
I think that's an important point. I think we're going to wrap really quickly. So I'm going to come to the three of you. Closing remarks from you. Anything else you feel which is very critical when it comes to this conversation?
I think there is always an impression that ESG is something which is capex intensive, it's not returns today. But there are a number of initiatives which companies can do, which is profitable, and therefore and companies which have not taken up should continuously take up. There are obviously new areas like whether it's green hydrogen and so on, which would take time in terms of maturity, but there are a number of initiatives which companies can do.
Well, that definitely is encouraging for people who have, the companies who haven't taken it to move forward. Mr. Bansal, could I come to you?
Can I make a brief remark here? In fact, in terms of ESG, I think currently now only the larger companies are mandated to do that. But I think we need to see the entire value chain. I think if any larger company has to ensure a compliance, 30, 40 or 50% of resources actually come from the smaller companies or mid-sized companies. I think it's very important that you see the entire value chain. That's very important. But at the same time, I think larger companies will have to provide the technical, financial and innovation support to these smaller companies so that the entire value chain can get
So I think very critical point, value chain and inclusion, like Namrata has said. Last word, Mr. Singh, to you.
Yeah, so two quick challenges. Number one, if we talk about the market, so green energy market, the bond size right now is around 3 billion USD in India, right? And the target that we have of net zero is 2047, and we are already in 2024. So we have just 20 years, and now all our AUMs under various market players have to be green by then. So the time is less, and we have a lot of work to do.
Time is less, we have a lot of work to do, but I think with having this critical conversation, so definitely things are moving. It's really been a pleasure to have you all with us here today at the India Sustainability Mission on NDTV. Thank you so much.